Hi, I'm your host Brandy. I'm glad to have you here today as we discuss the hot topic of digital surveillance in our society. We'll think about George Orwell's book 1984, the academic thoughts of Jeffrey Jones and Nomnikos, China's social credit system, and the documentary The Great Hack.
Nomnikos argues that we live in a surveillance society in which the interception of communications is so pervasive that it threatens to undermine the fundamental human rights that underpin democracy, and that this threat will only continue to grow in the future.
Surveillance has been around for a long time, but the surveillance we see or don't see today is quite different to anything we have ever known.
Nomnikos also notes that it is contended that we are sleepwalking when it comes to surveillance, and that this apathy stems mainly from the state's convincing justifications for increasing its powers, and from the public's struggle to grasp the meaning and value of privacy.
When you think about surveillance, George Orwell's novel 1984 comes to mind. With the idea that Big Brother is watching, we were engrossed in a totalitarian society where everyone was a slave to a tyrannical regime. It put the thoughts into our heads that
to tell deliberate lies while generally believing in them, to forget any fact that has become inconvenient, and then, when it becomes necessary again, to draw it back from oblivion for just so long as it is needed, to deny the existence of objective reality, and all the while to take account of the reality which one denies. All of this is indispensably necessary. Even in using the word doublethink, it is necessary to exercise doublethink. For by using the word, one admits that one is tampering with reality. By the fresh act of doublethink, one erases this knowledge, and so on indefinitely, with the lie always one leap ahead of the truth.
And now we have fiction becoming reality.
Jeffrey Jones states that to be watched in the interest of law enforcement is one thing, but to be watched politically is quite another.
So let's look at China. You've heard about the social credit system, right? The highly sophisticated surveillance system that monitors every aspect of people's lives, made up of 200 million surveillance cameras, artificial intelligence, and facial recognition systems. This form of surveillance is used to condition and control the behavior of China's 1.4 billion citizens. A high score, you'll enjoy conformity and gain perks like travel. A low score, you'll likely be restricted in much of your everyday life and find it hard to travel and obtain work. Harsh, right? It's currently in its final testing phases and goes live in 2020. Remember to love your government, folks. China, it seems extreme, right? Like, we couldn't possibly imagine anything so outrageous in a democracy that... Oh wait, Cambridge Analytica.
And that gets us to The Great Hack. In The Great Hack, David Carroll, a university teacher, asks a class of students, who has seen an advertisement that has convinced you your microphone is listening to your conversations? The students raise their hands, David and the students laugh. He goes on to say, it's hard for us to imagine how else it could work, but what's happening is your behaviour is being accurately predicted. So the ads that seem uncannily accurate, that have to be eavesdropping on us, are more likely to be evidence that the targeting works and predicts our behaviour.
So let's get to the Great Hack. The one thing this documentary does well is make the invisible data of our everyday lives visible and explain how a company like Cambridge Analytica could weaponize our data against us. Seems extreme. Make no mistake, this was an unethical and cunning harvest of people's data, which was used to create psychological profiles and manufactured propaganda to spew back at them, and warp their sense of reality and impose undue influence upon them. This can be likened to the use of weapons-grade technologies and psychological warfare, all to win an election. It's a must-see documentary.
Carol Chadwell notes that Cambridge Analytica is gone, but it is really important to understand the Cambridge Analytica story actually points to a much bigger, more worrying story, which is that our personal data is out there and it's being used against us in ways we don't understand. Jeffrey Jones reminisces about his own use of the Google search engine, saying that instead of putting me through to my chosen destination, Google asked me first to agree to its terms and conditions, a requirement I had not previously been aware of. Its privacy reminder stated that Google collected data about its users, drawing on online search information about restaurants visited, videos watched, and so forth, and that it processed the information to find out, for example, where users were located. It used the information to improve services and to deliver ads. In other words, if you use Google, you are under a sophisticated form of private surveillance.
Digital surveillance occurs in many ways, such as tracking cookies, data harvesting, targeting, data mining, and algorithms that can and do undermine our individual liberties. The internet is known as one of mankind's greatest achievements of the 20th century. It gave us information at our fingertips and connectivity and freedom like never before. It also gave us memes. Man, what a time to be alive. And let's not forget about the endless pictures of kittens and puppies that are everywhere. The internet gave individuals a voice and digital footprints, meaning that everything you do online can be compiled, analysed, and fed back to you.
Jeffrey Jones concludes that the story of surveillance is a parable one in two senses. One is that where governments possess surveillance powers, they will eventually abuse them, suggesting a need to be alert to potential problems and to address them preemptively through such means as credible legislative and judicial oversight. The second is that while some private companies help to protect us against an over-intrusive state, others exploit the techniques of surveillance in an abusive manner themselves, a situation that requires further political attention and regulatory redress.
So to recap, surveillance, it's all about control. Sorry to disillusion you. The basic business model of the internet is for a provider of information to ask a user to click on an I agree button so that they can harvest all their data. Again, sorry to disillusion you. You need to ask yourself, is the trade-off between privacy and personalization actually worth it?
This has been a Digital Life of Brandy production. Rah!